You're listening to As You Go, a production of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. At Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries, we're all about helping women fulfill our role in the Great Commission. Jesus said, as you're going, make disciples. So in our podcast, we want to focus on being a disciple, growing in discipleship and in obedience, and then making disciples. Hello, I'm Ruth McDonald, the director of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries and the host for your podcast today. Thank you for joining us, for taking your time out of your busy schedule as you're going to join us for this episode of As You Go. Today I want to talk to you in the middle of what is our Easter season as I'm recording this. Now, you may be listening at any other time of the year, and if you are, that's fine. But when it's recorded, we're right here at Easter. So we're busy with the preparations for Easter Sunday, which is absolutely my favorite Sunday of the year, has been all my life. What a wonderful and meaningful time it is to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which truthfully we do every Sunday when we gather on the first day of the week. But it's especially meaningful to meet on Easter Sunday or Resurrection Sunday. Many years ago, when I was a missionary in Japan, something interesting happened one Easter Sunday morning. We always had a habit there, a kind of a tradition of decorating a cross, a small wooden cross made out of wood and chicken wire, with flowers. And we would have a time during our worship service on Easter where the believers in that small congregation would prepare a testimony about the goodness of God and the way that they'd seen him work in their lives. And they would give their testimonies one by one and then place some 2 or 3 little flowers on the cross. This was a small cross. And by the time they finished, we had decorated the cross with our testimonies and our praise. So we took something very, very plain and simple and not attractive, and we made it into a beautiful trophy of God's grace and God's goodness to us. Well, we were cleaning up after the Easter morning service that day, and an elderly woman who had not too many months before been saved and baptized in the church, she was helping to clean up that day. And we had some flowers left over, so we didn't know what to do with them. They had all been cut short so that they would be easy to place in that chicken wire covering that little cross. And I said, I don't know what to do with them. And she said, can I have some? I'd love to have some to take home and put at the Buddhist altar in honor of my husband. Well, you can imagine the shock I felt. I was like, oh, my goodness, Houston, we have a problem. So I blubbered around a little bit on why we needed to talk about that some more. And I don't remember now if she took flowers or didn't take flowers, but I was floored. And then I started thinking about it, and I realized, how in the world can this woman go straight from an Easter worship Sunday service to a Buddhist altar and place flowers at the cross and then at the Buddhist altar? I was just shocked. And then as I thought about it more, I thought, do we ever do that? You don't probably live in a country where there are actual idols, statues, shrines. But have you ever left a worship service and gone right back to something or someone that competes with your devotion to your God? If we're not careful, and if we're really honest, I think we can say yes. Yes, we can relate to that. That was a good learning opportunity for her, and we were able to meet with her for a few sessions after that to talk about some things that she still wasn't clear about in her Christian walk. It's a long process. She was saved in her 80s, and so she had a lot of Buddhist culture that was part of her understanding of the world, a part of her worldview. So it took her a little bit longer to realize what was wrong with what she wanted to do. In the 10 Commandments, we're told, you shall have no other gods before me. We're also told not to make any graven images or to worship anything other than our God. Now that can be taken quite literally in countries like Japan and India and other places in the world. But it's not only saying that, it's also saying that all of our trust, all of our devotion, all of our praise and worship belongs to only our God, which has much, much broader implications as we expand on that and think about it in more than just a literal sense. That reminded me of another little incident we had in Japan many, many years ago. My son was growing up and going to a Japanese kindergarten. I think he was in 5-year-old kindergarten. And he had this really adorable little Japanese girlfriend at the time. She was also 5. And she was a neighbor, and so they walked to and from kindergarten together, holding hands and just being as cute as a button, little blonde-headed Evan and little dark-haired little Japanese girl. She was a spunky and adorable little girl who just really just entertained us regularly. When she would come to our house to play with the other children, she would always get on to us for speaking English. She would, if she ever caught us saying anything to one another in English, she'd say, "That's English. I don't understand English. You need to quit speaking English." So we would stop and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then the next time she would hear us, she'd say, "That's English. You're speaking English again." So she was just really cute, and we loved her a lot. She came to Sunday school with us a few times. And one of those days we had, for our craft time, we had made little stick puppets. And I don't remember what the story was, but I know Jesus was one of the characters. So we had Jesus on a little wooden chopstick. You probably would have used a popsicle stick, but we used a chopstick. So Jesus on a chopstick, and whoever the other characters were. So she had finished up Sunday school and church, and she was getting ready to go and getting her coat and her bag and all her little things so that she could go. And she got out of the door and down the steps of the church and said, "Oh no, I forgot my God." So she had to go back in because she had forgotten her God and make sure that she got her little Jesus on a chopstick so she could take him home with her. And I got so tickled because of what she said. "I forgot my God." Again, an understanding of her culture made it funnier and sadder to me, because the Japanese actually do carry their gods through the streets several times a year so that the gods can visit every person in the neighborhood. We know that our God carries us, right? But she had forgotten her God. And I thought, that's an interesting concept, to have forgotten our God and left him at church. Have we ever done that? Like the elderly lady left the church, took the flowers and gave them to another God. And this little girl forgot her God and just left him at church. There's a passage that actually relates to this that I found in the book of Deuteronomy, of all places. And it's Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 11 through 18. And it says, "Take care lest you forget the Lord your God, by not keeping his commandments and his rules and his statutes, which I command you today. Lest when you have eaten and are full and have built good houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks multiply, and your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, who led you through the great and terrifying wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty ground where there was no water, who brought you water out of a flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna that your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and test you to do you good in the end. Beware, lest you say in your heart, 'My power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth.' You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers, as it is this day." So it begins by saying, take care lest you forget the Lord your God. And it ends by saying, you need to remember, you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth. So this little girl who forgot her God is a good lesson for us. I hope you will remember her and remember your God. When things are going well, remember that to give thanks to Him. It's easier for us to remember God when we really need something, isn't it? But when everything's going well and His blessings and goodness are shining down upon us, let's remember to look up and thank Him. When I was a little girl, I only ever had one pastor, and that was my dad. So I got kind of tired sometimes of his preaching and his illustrations. But one of them that I heard him give a lot was about some pigs that were on the ground just feasting on acorns. And they were under a big oak tree that was dropping those acorns. And they were just feasting and filling their bellies full, but they never looked up. They totally took it for granted that those acorns were just there for them. No heed was given to where they came from. They never looked up and thanked the oak tree for giving them what they were enjoying. And he always said, don't be a pig. Make sure you look up and thank God. Don't forget your God. Don't forget Him at church. Don't leave Him there, but take Him with you during every day of your lives. Don't forget your God. You know, I've had a lot of people through the years tell me in absolutely no uncertain terms, I think Christianity is great for those who are, poor, those who are troubled, those who've suffered and are suffering, people around the world that are going through catastrophe and disaster. It's wonderful that Christians reach out to them, and I think it's just wonderful for people who are really needy. The Christian message is a wonderful thing. But me, I don't need God. The first time I ever heard anyone say that, I was like, I'm backing up because the lightning's about to strike. The lightning did not strike, but I heard it after that by many people. Seems like in a well-to-do country where things are going well, we're not at war, we're affluent, we have plenty, we don't know what it's like to go to bed at night hungry. A lot of us just assume, I don't need God. I don't need God in the way that somebody who's poor and destitute and homeless and has, food insecurity and someone who's broken and addicted and, they need God. Yeah, obviously they need God, but I don't need God because everything's going well for me. What a mistake we make to think that. We do need God. Everything's going well for you because of God and His blessings and His grace that He is pouring out on you. In James, we read, every good and perfect gift comes from the Father. Nothing is deserved, and nothing comes that hasn't been sent through His hands. So whether you perceive yourself to be in need, or you perceive yourself as having a full life and a full cup, you still need to remember your God. Don't forget your God. Don't forget Him and leave Him at the church. Don't forget Him in your daily life. Another thing that I've seen through the years, particularly in a non-Christian country, the one I worked in was Japan, is that a lot of people tend to think that they will keep their gods. All the ideas and philosophies and religious ideas that they came up with, they don't want to get rid of those because they're nice and they're traditional and it's what their family believes in. But they'll be happy to add God, the God of the Bible, to the other gods. You remember what we referred to in the Ten Commandments? Thou shalt have no other God before me. Now that doesn't mean you can have another God after me. I think that the translation of that is a bit unfortunate because it actually means you're not to have any other gods, period. So you're not to have any other gods besides me. Just I'm the only God that you should have. But a lot of times in a polytheistic culture, people are like, I have no problem with adding Jesus. The more the merrier. If I can pray to another God, that's one more base I got covered. Well, that sounds silly to you who are listening today. And yet, once again, is there something about that that reflects the human heart and your human heart as well? Is it like the idea of taking the flower from the church to the Buddhist altar? Is it like forgetting your God and leaving him at church? Is there something you can learn from our friends that come from a different context? I'll add him to the other gods. I was reading recently about times of uncertainty in our lives. We talked a little bit about times of plenty, but let's talk a little bit about times of uncertainty. Times of the unknown, the unknowable, the uncomfortable, the unavoidable. What do you run to? What is your default setting that you run to in times of the unknown, the unknowable, the uncomfortable, and the unavoidable? In the book that I was reading, it says, uncertainty is quite revealing. Ambiguity reveals where we instinctively go to feel the illusion of security again. You're feeling insecure. You're feeling like everything's spinning out of control. You're feeling like you don't know the future. You don't have any control over what's going on. Where do you go? What do you do to feel the illusion of being in control? I would play the Jeopardy music and let you think about it a little bit, but that would get boring. For me, I might scroll a lot on my phone. I might look at TikTok and videos about, I don't know, gardening and crafting and shopping and, all manner of things that I have small interest in. I might call friends and talk to them. I might watch, I might binge a show on Netflix. Or I might just get busy so that I don't really have time to contemplate. There are a lot of different things. I might eat. What are your default settings? Where do you go in times of uncertainty to make you feel like you've got control? Those things are adding gods to the God that we already have. Not necessarily. Like I know that God made a good cup of tea, if you're British, to make you feel better. He can use food to comfort you. He can use the fellowship of other people to comfort you. Absolutely. And when you're thanking God for that blessing and acknowledging him in it, then I don't believe that's another God or an idol. But if there are things that you repeatedly are going to in order to feel in control, that's the beginning of a compulsion or an addiction that can get us in trouble. So God ought to be the first and the only place that we really run to feel secure. One of the problems is that life is insecure. Life is full of uncertainty. The future is unknowable. There is mystery in the future as we walk with God. We'll never have all the answers. But that doesn't mean to look in other places besides God for the answers. That is our invitation to walk more closely to God in the mystery. I was reading after a man named Jeremy Taylor, who's actually an Anglican clergyman, who said, "A religion without mystery must be a religion without God." Because mystery is a given for a relationship between the infinite and the finite. There will always be things we don't understand. But that is our opportunity, not to run to things that make us feel better, but to run to God, because we know he has the answers. Whether he lets us know or not is up to him. But he does hold the answers, and we can trust in him. So the mystery, the uncertainty, the confusion can draw us closer to God We don't need other things. We don't need to seek for the answers in other things. We can nestle into him and value him. One person I've read after says, as we follow Jesus into uncertainty, we are free to join in the dance of life in fullness without having a clue about what the steps are. That was actually written by a man named Gerald May. Let me read it again. As we follow Jesus into uncertainty, we are free, in the words of Gerald May, to join the dance of life in fullness without having a clue about what the steps are. You don't have to know the steps in order to enjoy the dance. And one of the keys to that is that we value our partner more than we value our performance. If we have a good partner who will lead us in the dance, then it doesn't matter if we look foolish. It doesn't matter if we know the steps. It doesn't matter if there's a surprise and it's not what we thought it would be. We have a partner who is strong and secure and who leads us into this dance that's called life. Now, I'm not a dancer. My mama didn't dance and my daddy didn't rock and roll, and neither do I. But I like the imagery there of letting our partner, who is God, lead us into the dance of life, giving ourselves fully, knowing that he will lead us and guide us through the uncertainty and the mystery that is life. So today, I hope that you've enjoyed our talking a little bit about idols, idolatry, and some of the random things that God has taught me by living in a country of literal idols that apply to our lives here in a different kind of a context. May the Lord help you to find your trust and certainty in him today, and not either forget your God or add to your God, but to cling to God, your partner, as you go through this life. Thank you for your time today, and I pray God's blessings on you during this Easter season and around the year.